الله فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعض يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما فلما تبين له قال أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وإذ قال إبراهيم ربي أرني كيف تحيي الموتى قال ولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي قال فخذ 4 من الطير فصرهن إليك ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزعا ثم ادعهن يأتينك سعيا واعلم أن الله عزيز حكيم صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء والله واسع عليم. الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. قول معروف ومغفرة خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى والله غني حليم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى كالذي ينفق ماله رئاء الناس ولا يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فمثله كمثل صفوان عليه تراب فأصابه وابل فتركه صلدا لا يقدرون على شيء مما كسبوا والله لا يهدي القوم الكافرين. ومثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم ابتغاء مرضات الله وتثبيتا من أنفسهم كمثل جنة بربوة أصابها وابل فآتت أكلها ضعفين فإن لم يصبها وابل فطل والله بما تعملون بصير. أيود أحدكم أن تكون له جنة من نخيل وأعناب تجري من تحتها الأنهار له فيها من كل الثمرات وأصابه الكبر وله ذرية ضعفاء فأصابها إعصار فيه نار فاحترقت كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. Sadaqa Allahu al-Aliyyul Azim. Surah Baqarah, ayat 266.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम या अय्युहल्लज़ीना आमनू अनफ़िक़ू मिन तय्यिबाति मा कसब्तुम व मिम्मा अख़रजना लकुम मिनल अर्ज़ वला तयम्मऊल ख़बीसा मिन्हु तुनफ़िक़ूना वलस्तुम बिआख़िज़िही इल्ला अन तुग़मिज़ू फ़ीही वअलमू अन्नल्लाह गनियुन हमीद अश्शैतानु यइदुकुमुल फ़क़्रा व यअमुरुकुम बिल फ़हशाह वल्लाहु यइदुकुम मग़फ़िरतम मिन्हु व फ़ज़ला वल्लाहु वासिउन अलीम यु'तिल हिकमता मन यशा व मन यु'तल हिकमता फ़क़द ऊतिया खैरम कसीरा वमा यज़्ज़करू इल्ला उलुल अलबाब वमा अनफ़क़्तुम मिन नफ़क़तिन औ नज़रतुम मिन नज़रिन फ़इन्नल्लाहा यअलमुहु वमा लिज़्ज़ालिमीना मिन अंसार इन तुब्दु सदक़ाति फ़निम्मा हिया व इन तुख़्फ़ूहा व तु'तूहल फ़ुक़रा फ़हुवा खैरुल लकुम व युकफ़्फ़िरु अन्कुम मिन सय्यिआतिकुम वल्लाहु बिमा तअमलूना ख़बीर लैसा अलैका हुदाहुम वलाकिन्नल्लाहा यहदी मन यशा वमा तुनफ़िक़ू मिन खैरिन फ़लिअन्फ़ुसिकुम वमा तुनफ़िक़ूना इल्ला इब्तिग़ाअ वजहिल्लाह वमा तुनफ़िक़ू मिन खैरिन युवफ़्फ़ा इलैकुम व अंतुम ला तुज़लमून लिलफ़ुक़राइल्लज़ीना उहसिरू फ़ी सबीलिल्लाहि ला यस्ततीऊना ज़रबन फ़िल अर्ज़ यहसबुहुमुल जाहिलु अग़निया मिनत तअफ़्फ़ुफ़ि तअरिफ़ुहुम बिसीमाहुम ला यसअलूनन नासा इल्हाफ़ा वमा तुनफ़िक़ू मिन खैरिन फ़इन्नल्लाहा बिही अलीम।
थोड़ा सा और पढ़ देता हूँ। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अल्लज़ीना युन्फ़िक़ूना अम्वालहुम बिल्लैलि वन्नहारि सिर्रन व अलानियतन फ़लहुम अज्रुहुम इंद रब्बिहिम वला खौफ़ुन अलैहिम वला हुम यहज़नून الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا فمن جاءه موعظة من ربه فانتهى فله ما سلف وأمره إلى الله ومن عاد فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون يمحق الله الربا ويربي الصدقات والله لا يحب كل كفار أثيم إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وأقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وذروا ما بقي من الربا إن كنتم مؤمنين فإن لم تفعلوا فأذنوا بحرب من الله ورسوله وإن تبتم فلكم رؤوس أموالكم لا تظلمون ولا تظلمون. Such a big reaction that, the previous ayat were talking about usury and interest and riba and all that stuff. Then you look at the tone changes right away. It says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, fear Allah, wa dharu ma baqiya min al-riba in kuntum mu'minin. And of course, let go of that which is from interest and riba and usury, if you are truly mu'min. And then right away the threat, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you do not do so, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then call them for, be at war with Allah and His Prophet. Meaning those who are using usury and interest, get them to do what? They're in fight with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're at war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're at war with Rasulullah. وَإِن تُبْتُمْ فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. But of course, if you tawbah, then you have your capital and your wealth. لَا تَظْلِمُونَ وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ. They don't do zulm on anyone and they're not wronged either. So they don't wrong anyone and no one else wrongs them. وَإِن كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ وَأَن تَصَدَّقُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. صدق الله العلی العظیم. آپ پڑھ لیں تھوڑا سا. ایک آیت اور Very quickly, let me just go over this third juz that we recited. In this third juz of Quran, there are two portions. The first portion is the remaining ayat of Surah Baqarah, and the second portion is the beginning of Surah Al Imran. In the remaining portion of Surah Baqarah, which we are still reciting, we didn't get to the beginning of Surah Al Imran, there are three main discussions. Number one, there are two big ayat. One which Mehdi Bhai just recited at the end, which is the largest ayat of Quran, ayat number 282. As far as the length is concerned, it's the longest. And then the other big ayat is not in the sense of length, rather in the sense of its nature and its exalted nature and its azamat and it being exalted. And that ayat is Ayatul Kursi. So Ayatul Kursi and ayat number 282 and ayat number 255. Ayatul Kursi is ayat number 255, right? Let's just confirm. 255. So ayat number 255 and ayat number 282. So these are the two big ayat, one as far as the length, the other as far as the azamat. Ayatul Kursi, because of the azamat that it has, the fadilat is that 17 times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about himself. The name of Allah and the name about himself is mentioned 17 times. There's a zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the second ayat, which is the lengthiest ayat, ayat number 282, it's called ayat madayana, meaning it talks about dain, it talks about debts. It talks about, the qarz and the loan and the debts, and that how you should get it written, and if there's any doubt, you should bring witnesses. And of course, it mentions two men and one man or two women, and mentions it in that format. Second discussion that you find in the remaining portion of Surah Baqarah is the story of two Anbiya. One is the story of Hazrat Ibrahim and his Ma'arika with Namrud, his Mubahisa with Namrud, and how he witnessed Ahya Mauta, that when he saw people being killed, and then how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revives them, brings them back to life. So Allah said, do you not believe? He said, no, I do believe. لِأَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. So for the itminan qalb, I want to see. And then of course Allah told him to take 4 birds, cut them into pieces, put them into different places, and then call them with our izn. And of course when he did so, all the birds came together. He said that's how easy it is for Allah to create. Second is the story of Hazrat Uzair. Uzair is an important Nabi in a sense that Christians thought Hazrat Isa was son of Allah. Jews thought Uzair ibn Allah, that Uzair was the son of Allah. Why? Because of this, extraordinary nature of the life of Hazrat Uzair. That he was passing by a Qarya, ayat 259 talks about it. He was passing by a land where he saw the ruins of that land, that people had died and how nobody was alive in it. And he said the same thing what Hazrat Ibrahim had said, that how will Allah bring this all back to life again? And so in order to teach something to a Nabi of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does what? Says, we'll make you witness it, firsthand. He makes him die. Hazrat Uzair dies on the spot. And then when he wakes up, he asks him, how long were you gone for? He said, maybe a day or two. He said, no, you were gone for 100 years. And we have raised you back after 100 years. That's why there's a question that there were 2 brothers. One, they were born at the same time. But at the time of death, when they both died, one was 50, the other was 150. And that is the story of Hazrat Uzair. Third is the discussion of Sadaqa and Sud. That people started conflating charity and Sadaqa with Sud. And all these ayat that we just recited, that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made Sud and riba and usury to be haram, that you should not conflate the two things. And يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبِ الصَّدَقَاتِ. Sadaqa is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases it. When you give, sadaqah increases. But when you take in the form of usury, in the form of interest, it might seem like you're getting more. Look at the concept. When I do take riba, na'udhu billah, meaning what? What is riba? When I charge for extra on something, that means I'm taking interest. That means I loaned someone money and I said, you can return it back to me in a week's time, but 1.5%, for example. So I loaned you $100, but in return I want $150. This is called riba. Simplest example. I'm not going into more complex example. Simplest example. And then I have $100 and I give half as sadaqah. Okay? So in the first scenario, I was at 100 and I got to 150. In the second scenario, I was at 100 and I got to 50. What is the public general view is? Which one of these two are gaining something? They'll all lean over this person. The person who got the profit of $50. From 100 he made it to 150. Not the one who went from 100 to 50. Allah denies this. He says, يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. No, riba is something which you seem that you might have gained something apparent. No, you've actually caused the remaining of your wealth to be fasad as well. But that which remains after having given sadaqah, that has potential. This is something which will definitely grow. But that has to be understood. Kind of like the example of the tree. If a gardener does not chop off these extra branches, the new fruits and the new flowers and the new leaves will not come out. You need to chop some of these off. That's what sadaqah is. Chopping off and getting rid of that extra from you so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you more. And all of these ayat which then talk about the concept of riba. Inshallah we'll discuss more of these in the upcoming night. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Just make a note of where we stopped so that we can finish it. 3, ayat number 283. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام را كتاب أنزلناه إليك لتخرج الناس من الظلمات إلى النور بإذن الله ربهم إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. For the past 2 nights we discussed the ayat of Surah Baqarah which are in welcoming the month of Ramadan. And although the discussion did not conclude or we did not finish the discussion, there's just one note that I wanted to finish off as far as fasting is concerned before I move on to the new discussion that we want to start from tonight, and inshallah we want to eventually get to the tafsir, which I want to introduce, that which surah, which tafsir we will be doing in the next upcoming nights. We had talked about some of the benefits of this fast, and we mentioned some of the individual benefits. We mentioned some of the spiritual and social effects and the benefits of this dua or this fast. And I skipped through many of these things. But one of the fascinating things regarding this fast that we find is the discussion where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, As-sawmu li wa ana ujzi bih. Sawm is for me, fasting is for me, and I am the one who gives jaza for this sawm. I am the one who gives compensation for this sawm. Now you might raise a question that all the ibadat are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is salat not for Allah? Is zakat not for Allah? Is khums not for Allah? Isn't all the other things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why is it that he's saying as-sawmu li, that sawm is for me and I go ahead and give compensation to this sawm? Well, there are reasons what ulama have mentioned why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this to be exclusively for himself. Fasting for me, and I will personally compensate for that. All the ibadat are for Allah, or else it won't be called an ibadat, right? That is understood. This special association that he has with this fast of the month of Ramadan is that, this ibadat, since all the other ibadat have a physical element to them, which is apparent to the public's view. Whereas, having ikhlas in other ibadat is difficult. While this ibadat does not have a physical element, and I'll explain further. Therefore, there is so much internal and khulus in this ibadat, that there is so much sincerity in this ibadat, which you don't find in other ibadat. And the reason that there's so much sincerity in this ibadat is because there's no, concept of showing off and riyakari as far as fast is concerned. For example, if it wasn't for someone to tell us that they're fasting, we won't find out. But if I'm praying, nobody really needs to know, or I don't need to, after the salat, say, oh, by the way, I was praying. No, just merely looking at me that I was doing this action, you realize that I was what? Praying. But if I come in contact with you, if it's not the month of Ramadan, if it's outside of the month of Ramadan, if I'm meeting you, unless, of course, if I eat something in front of you, you can't tell if I'm fasting or if I'm not fasting. I can go the entire day without revealing this to anyone, yet nobody will find out whether I was fasting or not until I disclose it to them. So from this internal aspect that this fasting has, Allah says what? Sawm is for me and I will give the compensation. A story of an Arabi who was riding his camel in a desert and saw a man praying with utmost khudu and khushu. He rode up to the man, got off his camel, and he was mesmerized that in the middle of the desert, this man is performing the salat with khudu and khushu and ultimate, humility and humbleness. The man felt the presence of someone, the one who was praying. So he prolonged his ruku. He lengthened his sujood. When he finished, the Bedouin said, Ni'mal musalli. How good of a person, who's praying like this. Praised him for his salat. The man replied, I'm also fasting. Because you were able to see my salat, but you don't know that I'm also fasting. That he had to go ahead and spell out for the man. So from this also you can understand that person can praise and look at you from away and praise you for your salat, but might not know that you're fasting. So the man said, I'm also fasting. Poor Bedouin was already deceived by man's salat. He was enchanted when he heard that he was also fasting. He said, can you keep my camel as amanat until I get back? This Bedouin said to him. When he came back, the man and the camel were long gone. There was no sign of them. The Bedouin spontaneously said, Nahl al-qulus عن المصلي الصائم صلى فعجبني وصام فرابني. He said, his prayer and fast enchanted me, but beware, never give your camel to a praying, fasting man. That is the conclusion. If a person is praying and he's also fasting, never leave your camel as amanat to that person, because this will happen to him, to you as well. So all the ibadat have two parts: action from heart and action from the body, meaning the physical aspect of the ibadat and the spiritual and the internal aspect of the ibadah. When you pray, you make niyat. That's the action of your heart, right? Sometimes you don't even have to utter that I'm praying 2 rakat namaz, this and that. All you got to do is run it through your head and through your mind, and that's all is needed. You don't have to say it. So a lot of people make a big deal out of making the intention correctly. No, just say it in your own language, however you can, and just run it by your head, and you don't even have to utter the words. So the action from the heart is when you make the niyat. When you read the surah, when you do the ruku, when you do the sujood, these are all what? These are the physical actions. So every ibadat has the actions that are associated with the heart, like the niyat, and the actions that are associated with your physical movement, like the sujood and the ruku. Similarly, when you perform hajj, niyat is related to the heart, wearing the ihram, circumambulating the Kaaba, performing all the other actions, sa'i, safa and marwa. All of those are the physical actions that body needs to move. But sawm, fasting, has only one aspect, and that is entirely related to the heart. There's no bodily action needed. You might disagree with me. What are you talking about? There's no bodily action needed. We're depriving ourselves. No, in salat, you had to do something to show that you're praying. In fasting, you don't do anything. You just refrain from doing anything, right? Islam said, fast by refraining from eating and drinking and all those other things. It did not say by doing certain things that you fast. So therefore, fast and sawm is what? Sawm is to the heart, and there's no bodily action needed. And therefore, when fasting, you make the intention before the adhan of Fajr, "Oh Allah, I will refrain from these 10 things. I won't perform them." Therefore, sawm is your intention and action of heart. It is merely your inner determination to refrain from things, or it's lack of doing anything. You don't really do anything. You just refrain from other things, unlike all the other ibadat. And that is why this is the ibadat for which Allah says, "As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bihi." Sawm is for me, and I am the one who gives compensation for it. Prophet added, "Inna fil jannati baban yuqalu lahu Rayyan." Rayyan sitting here. Inna fil jannati baban. There's a door in Jannat. What is that door called? Rayyan. The name of that door is Rayyan. That door in Jannat is called Rayyan. Only reserved for those who used to fast will enter from this door, and it closes afterwards out of the respect for those people who have already entered in it. That's the beauty of it. So fasting, of course, has that element which other ibadat do not. That was the remaining portion of yesterday's discussion that we could not get to. Tonight, what I wanted to begin in the brief time that I have until 7:40, and we will just initiate the discussion tonight, and inshallah we will get into the tafsir of the surah that I'm inshallah about to reveal. Not reveal in a sense, reveal to you that the surah that we will be discussing. So in order for you to be better prepared, this is what we want to do. We want you to be also engaged in it, so that it's not just, you're hungry at the moment, you're tired for the entire day's work, you just want this to be over, salat time, and then you go and break your fast. But if you, do your little bit of a homework, this is where, because the discussion will come, the mahjuriyat of Quran is that lack of reading and then lack of application, lack of putting it into practice, because we rarely read it. When we don't read it, we're not going to know what's in it. When we don't know what's in it, we won't be able to put it into practice. So this ayat that I recited is from Surah Ibrahim, Alif Lam Ra. Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka litukhrijan nasa min az-zulumati ila an-nur. Alif Lam Ra, a book has been revealed to you, O Muhammad, so that by the permission of their Lord, you may or you would be able to lead people from darkness to light. A lot of time people question, why should we go ahead and do tabligh? Why should we go ahead and do what is called da'wat al-Islam, tabligh al-Islami? Why should we go ahead and call others to the fold of Islam? You don't necessarily have to demographically increase the numbers of Muslims in the world. That'll happen on its own. When people realize the beauty and the inner beauty, not by looking at the Muslims, rather looking at the Islam itself. Because when people look at the Muslims, if anything, they might be turned off by them. But when they look at the beauty of Islam, that really captivates them and that makes them come closer. So that will happen on its own. You don't need to go ahead and increase the number of Muslimin. All you got to do is to tell them the reality so that you can bring them out of zulumat لِتُخْرِجَ النَّاسَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, so that you may be able to bring people out of darkness into light. Why wouldn't you want to guide someone who's in darkness? Just walking down the street, you see someone is struggling to find the place, you turn on the camera, you turn on the lamp, or you turn on the torch or the light so that they can see it properly. Someone is looking for something over here, they can't see it. Nowadays, all of us in our phones, we have the camera. Behind the camera, you have the flashlight. You turn it on so that they can see it better. You say, well, what am I losing by turning on my flashlight? You turn on the flashlight so the person can find what they're looking for easily. Why not in their real life turn on the flashlight, bring them out of the darkness towards what? Towards nur. That would really be service to mankind. Bringing people out of darkness into light has been repeated in Quran on numerous occasions. Sometimes it is given nisbat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it says, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min az-zulumati ila nur. We just recited this ayat earlier today from Ayatul Kursi. That Allah is the one who brings people out of darkness towards light. Second, the prophets did the same thing. In an akhrij qawmaka min az-zulumat ila nur, so that you may bring your qawm out of zulumat toward nur. And sometimes this reference is given and nisbat is given to the book itself. Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka litukhrijan nas. Book is the one which is bringing people out of darkness toward life. Disbelief, discord, ignorance, polytheism, doubts, these all resemble darkness. These are different manifestations of darkness. Disbelief, discord, polytheism, ignorance, doubts. Any type of doubt is what? Darkness. When you clarify that doubt, you come out of that darkness into light. These all resemble darkness. Since humans in these conditions are puzzled. When you're in doubt, you're puzzled. You don't know what is the right answer. Should you do this? Should you not do this? A lot of time nowadays, a lot of people have questions regarding fast. That the same questions are repeated. Can I take this? Can I eat this? Can I not eat? Can I get the shots, for example? Can I get the vaccine, for example? Yes. We even released a video for that so that this question is not repeated, but it's still, you'd be surprised, on regular basis, on daily basis, since the month of Ramadan began, every day, and I'm not lying, I'm still fasting, that every day I get calls, Moulana, can we get the vaccine? Yes, we revealed the video just for that reason. Yes, you can get the vaccine. It will not invalidate your fast. And I'll tell you what, I will get another call tomorrow as well from someone because they didn't hear this. So this is something which is ongoing. People ask questions, of course, related to fasting because right now it matters to them. They want their fast to be correct. When we go to Hajj, people are so worried about Hajj and these activities of Hajj because they want everything to be done in the proper manner. So this is where, people, different types of information can bring them out of this doubt. Having a doubt is what? Being in dark. When you remove that doubt, you have come out of darkness into light. And therefore, since insan is in these conditions puzzled, like the place which is dark, we cannot see anything. And when you can't see anything, You start getting frustrated. When you can't see the path ahead, you start getting frustrated. Similar is the case when there's disbelief, discord, ignorance, polytheism, doubts, you start getting frustrated. Light is that means of this sight, is the means of awakening, is the means of movement and growth. Just as all of these are contained in the heavenly book that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent upon us. It says, Kitabun ila nure ila siratil aziz. It's a book, it has nur, and it guides you to that path which is aziz. Originally, in the universe, there's darkness. And you may know science more than me, of course. Light is brought in. 97% of the universe is what? Dark. And Quran points out towards that. Surah Yasin, verse number 37 says, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ اللَّيْلُ نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارِ فَإِذَا هُمْ مُظْلِمُونَ. You've read this ayat so many times. You've heard this ayat so many times. That and a sign for them is the light, which we strip of daylight, and behold, they find themselves in the dark. So darkness was there, and then light is brought in. So if something is being stripped out of another, meaning what? Night is original and daylight is being stripped out of this night. How Allah does that? That still remains to be a phenomena for us. So two things are created to remove darkness. These two ayat of Quran, or Surah Yasin rather, talk about this. Two things, and I'll conclude with this point. Two things are created to remove darkness in our universe, at least in our planet. What are those two things? I don't even need to recite the ayat. What are the two things? The sun during the day and the moon at the night time. So even back then, when they didn't have street lights, when they would look at the moon and they'd be able to follow, because moon will be able to provide enough light for them at night time, although it's borrowing its light from the sun. But nonetheless, these are the two means of light for you during the day. And وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لَمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْأُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. Two ayat, 38 and 39, back to back talk about what? Two things that Allah has created to remove darkness from our planet. Agreed? Similarly, and then there's more discussion on those. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has created two things to remove darkness from mankind as well. One is in the form of this Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent. As He says in ayat Quran, قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ وَاتَّبَعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ مَعَهُ. Follow the nur which has been sent with Rasul. And second nur is the nur of Rasulullah himself, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then when Rasulullah was leaving this world, I'm out of my time, when Rasulullah was leaving this world. So two things to remove darkness from the world, sun and the moon. And the two things to remove the darkness from the hearts of mankind, Quran and the Prophet. And when Prophet was leaving this world, he made sure that this second bulb or the second light did not diminish. It continued. He said, Inni tarikun fikum al-thaqalain, kitab Allahi wa itrati ahl bayti. I'm leaving behind you two weighty things, meaning I'm leaving behind two nur for you. One is in the form of this Quran, which I brought with me, and second is in the form of my ahl bayt, my itrat. If you hold on, فَإِن تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِمَا, if you hold on to both of them, لَن يَفْتَرِقْ, these two will not separate from each other. You will never go astray, and they will return back to me on the day of judgment. So this is where, inshallah, we'll conclude our discussion, as I've run out of my time. But from tomorrow, we will be, inshallah, starting the tafsir of Surah Wal-Qamar, chapter number 54 from the Holy Quran, which is good enough in a lengthy wise, 55 ayat in it, that inshallah we will be able to cover majority of the matalib and the instructions that we find in this one of the more important chapters of the Holy Quran. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Need the mic.
Assalamu alaikum. So just a reminder that the daily program for the holy month of Ramadan starts at 6:45 p.m. with recitation of the Holy Quran, followed by Moulana Sahab's speech, and then immediately followed by Namaz-e-Maghribain, after which we proceed to the banquet hall for iftar, and then return upstairs in about 30 minutes after that for Namaz-e-Isha, and then the program concludes with Dua-e-Iftitah. The sponsors for tonight's program are Mr. Abbas and Mrs. Sajida Hussain, Mrs. Rubina Barkat Ali, Konan and Ambar Pirani, Mr. Mehboob and Mrs. Anjumara Hussain, Mr. Murtaza and Mrs. Taira Hussain, Mr. Irshad and Mrs. Sajda Haji, and Mr. Salim and Mrs. Zeba Rizvi. Kindly recite Surah Fatiha for the marhumeens of the sponsors, as well as for all of our marhumeen, and for those marhumeen who have no one to recite Fatiha for them. There is also a special request for Fatiha for marhum Barkat Ali Pirani, as well as marhum Akbar Muhammad, Amina Bhai Ghulam Ali, and the marhumeen of the Bawa family. Surah Fatiha. Opportunities for sponsorship are available every night. We're looking for 2 more sponsors for tomorrow, Wednesday, April 6th, as well as a few more sponsors for Friday, April 8th. 1 more sponsor we need for Saturday, April 9th, which is the 7th of Ramzan, and a few more sponsors for the Sunday program, April 10th. And then there's further sponsorship opportunities as we move through the remaining nights as well. If anyone is interested in taking the opportunity to obtain the sawab for the sponsorship, kindly reach out to myself, Brother Shariar Heather, or Brother Mustafa Kareem, or any of the volunteers and management at the masjid. And one final announcement, Anjuman Naujawanan-e-Ali Akbar is having a ziyarat giveaway this year. This is a all expense paid ziyarat trip to Iraq. The entry is free, and the drawing will take place on Eid al-Fitr. To register, you can go to the website njaliakbar.com, register there, and if anyone's interested in donating for this cause, they can give donation there as well. Without any further delay, we'll proceed with namaz. Salawat.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله صلاة المغرب استغفر الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك ونحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العالى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العالى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيح.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا علي يا عظيم يا غفور يا رحيم. أنت الرب العظيم الذي ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. وهذا شهر عزمته وكرمته وشرفته وفضلته على الشهور، وهو شهر الذي فرضت صيامه عليه، وهو شهر رمضان الذي أنزلت فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان، وجعلت فيه ليلة القدر وجعلتها خيرا من 1000 شهر. فيا ذا المن ولا يمن عليك، من علي بفكاك رقبتي من النار في من تمن عليه، وادخلني الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.